Now, folks, in other allegations, serious ones made this morning, Boris Johnson has denied claims he ignored warnings about alleged sexual misconduct by his former Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher, after a string of further claims about the MP emerged overnight. Dominic Cummings, the former number 10 Chief of Staff, even claimed Johnson jokingly referred to him as Pincher by name, Pincher by nature. Allegations are just that, of course, and everyone is innocent until proven guilty. We strongly believe that on this channel. But could this latest scandal fatally wound an already politically weakened Prime Minister? Well, joining me to discuss this is the journalist at politics.co.uk, Georgia Gilholy, and former Brexit Party MEP, Belinda and the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Georgia, can I start with you, please? As someone who has their ear to the ground, what's the latest with these allegations made about Boris? What is it suggested that Boris knew before Chris Pincher was given the position?
I mean, I'm sure all of us saw Theresa Coffey quite squirming on Sophie Ridge this morning, essentially refusing to say anything but that there was no specific allegations or sort of settled allegations that Johnson was aware of before reappointing Chris Pincher as Deputy Chief Whip in February, and this has been sort of on all the front pages this morning. This is a terrible look for the government. I think, frankly, the public is losing count of all the self-inflicted scandals, many of them, unfortunately, sex-related, that this government has overseen. I mean, we currently have an unnamed, of course, Tory MP who's been arrested on rape charges and has not been near the Commons since this arrest. This is just another sort of look that the public are getting at this very toxic Westminster culture, which I'm sure many of us have even seen sometimes with our own eyes.
Peter, is this not a case of it just being a plague on all your houses, essentially, within the House of Commons? Is there not a real systemic problem at the very heart and the culture of Westminster?
Well, there's certainly a drinking problem, and I say that having worked in Commons, but I don't at all think it's a plague on all your houses. And let me take two different examples that go to leadership. When Keir Starmer, we all know Labour's had a lot of problems politically. When Keir Starmer was elected leader, Labour had a different problem, relations with the Jewish community. He apologised on day one and committed himself to renewing relations. Yet when you look at the leadership of the Conservative Party, there are problems and scandals of a different nature, primarily sexual and some about outside business interests. And Boris Johnson has deflected and diffused and delayed. And that means you have a miasma of scandal over the Conservative Party, but you also have a Prime Minister putting his narrow political interest above the national interest. It's terrible for politics, it's terrible for government. But of course, it's actually bad for us because there's all these other things going on, cost of living crisis, we need investment infrastructure, and the tragedy in Ukraine, exactly a time when you want the Prime Minister focused on looking after us all and building alliance globally.
Belinda, you've been around politics in your career. Do you think that there is a real problem at the very heart of our democracy, frankly, as far as sexual harassment and assault, as even the allegation is concerned?
Well, I do think it is cross-party. I also think it's cross-parliament. Of course, I've experienced what it's been like at the EU Parliament, which has been described by many a female MEP as a hotbed of sexual harassment, sex parties, drugs, you name it. I think the heady, toxic mixture of narcissism, of power, of opportunity, also being away from family, I think it is a bad mix, but sex scandals is not a new thing. If you think back to the Profumo affair, right up until now.
Oh, we just lost Belinda there. Georgia, can I come to you? Dominic Cummings, right? He has obviously given comment this morning, but should we not take that with a pinch of salt, given that there is no love lost between Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings at this time?
I think it should, of course, be taken with a pinch of salt, as should, frankly, all political commentary. However, it's not just Dominic Cummings who is making these sort of claims. And we do know, of course, that Pincher resigned back in 2017 after similar allegations, and that there are, of course, rumours, once again, we're not sure if these are entirely true, that Boris Johnson himself has referred to Chris Pincher as Pincher by name, Pincher by nature in reference to apparently his sort of handsy way of dealing with people, which, I mean, the word handsy being used in these revelations seems to me also kind of a term that's trying to sort of trivialize it, make it seem just like, oh, you know, he can't, you know, handle himself. He can't handle himself around people. You know, that's just his personality. We're going to deal with it because he's a Boris loyalist, which unfortunately is, I think this is a cross-party issue, cross-political, transnational even. But I think that, you know, the issue is this is clearly a big issue in the Conservative Party right now. Who are the party in government with approximately 80-seat majority? Not sure exactly how many that's gone down by recently, and could be going down by again, of course, if Chris Pincher, if his constituency faces a by-election, which, you know, could be a possibility. Absolutely. Belinda, do you think, just bringing you back in, do you think Boris can turn the ship around, or do you think actually this all is really, it's this constant drip, isn't it, of these news stories which do not paint the party in a very good, positive political light at all? But do you think he can turn it around? Because I don't know about you, but one thing I'm nervous about is that the whole Brexit project isn't finished yet, Belinda.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think the timing of all these sort of recent allegations and the drip and a lot of the mainstream media being heavily biased against Boris, I think it's really, really unfortunate for Boris, but he doesn't help himself either. I think that his voters could put up with a lot of his flaws and sloppiness if he had remained the sort of anti-establishment hero of 2019. But because he hasn't really delivered as much as people were hoping, he cannot afford to keep making these mistakes. And knowing that there was a possible predatory man working for him and allowing him free reign without taking him aside at least and saying, right, Chris, I know there are rumours, there may not be any evidence yet, but just, you know, you've got to stop this behaviour if it's going on. I don't know if that happened or not, and I don't know if Boris was let down by the layers of people around him who should have vetted Chris better on this.
Peter, is it a case of, you know, you're seeing Sir Keir Starmer under investigation by Durham police, you're seeing all this pressure on the Prime Minister. There's no real alternative for voters, is there?
I disagree completely, and hopefully we'll know the answer on Keir Starmer soon, but I'm quite optimistic. I don't believe that Keir Starmer broke the rules in Durham, and bear in mind, he took that gambit of referring himself. But he's a lawyer, so I believe Keir Starmer will come out of that all right. And bear in mind, as of today, he's not been fined, and Boris Johnson, Chancellor, have. But another pundit said this weekend, the fish rots from the head down. And I want to make that broader point that, to be fair, all prime ministers in my lifetime and before of any political persuasion have been buffeted by personal scandals among their ministers. But the issue is they've been seen to take decisive action, and Boris Johnson has not done that. And I'm really alarmed by this quote attributed to him, but I think he's denied it, Pincher by name, Pincher by nature, because then he's going to have to look voters in the eye and say there are allegations of impropriety, actually allegations of criminality, and he made a joke about it and then promoted the person at the centre of the allegations. So I think this will come back to Boris Johnson, because his personal leadership failures become tied to the confirmed or alleged sexual misconduct of his ministers. And there are a lot of Tory ministers now in this bracket, unfortunately.
So, Georgia, do you think the 1922 committee of backbench Conservatives, do you think they will change the rules and that we'll soon see another confidence vote in the Prime Minister? Or is this yet, which a lot of my viewers believe actually, is this yet another attempt to unseat Boris Johnson?
I think it's difficult to see this particular scandal as an attempt to unseat Boris Johnson because it's essentially self-inflicted. Of course, Johnson is not responsible for Chris Pincher's actions, but as we've been discussing, a similar incident happened in 2017. Everyone knows about this, the allegations, and it was judged fit to promote him again. This is self-inflicted in many ways, and I think we've heard many rumours released to top newspapers that the 1922 committee will try and change the rules. I think whether or not they manage to change the rules, because obviously their rules are quite sort of secretive, but experts basically believe that they do have the power to change them, and they can threaten, Prime Ministers as they did with Theresa May with a fresh no confidence vote. I think it's a big possibility. Hard to pinpoint exactly when this will happen. Possibly not this scandal, but let's say there's another by-election. Let's say Johnson's found to have misled the Commons. I think it's difficult to see a situation where he's possibly not threatened with another vote again within 12 months.
Belinda, one question I want to ask you, and this is going to make me sound more woke than, I don't know, the Guardian newspaper, but do you think this would have happened under a female Prime Minister?
Possibly. It's very hard because rumours are very different from having actual evidence, and it hasn't been proven that Boris had actual evidence that this man committed predatory behaviour. It was rumours, and of course he was acquitted in 2017. So I do think it's slightly unfair to just guess that Boris definitely knew. However, I think it's happened under male, female prime ministers. I think, unfortunately, as I said, it's the toxic, heady mix of egos and narcissism and power that make people almost like go on heat. So no, I don't think it's to do with male or female prime ministers.
Right, we're going to have to leave it there, folks, but thank you very much for your time. That was the politics.co.uk journalist Georgia Gilholy, former Brexit Party MEP Belinda DeLucy, and the former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Thank you to each of you.